Welcome to our evidence based channel for awareness on mental health and relationship matters. If you find this video interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Ammar Mohammed. Hello, relationaries. Welcome back to another podcast. Today, we will be talking about, we have new buddies with us. We have new buddy friends. You don't have one. That's really nice. Kept him safe.
Just sitting there.
Today's topic, we're going to be talking about an experiment that was done by Dr. who? Jane
Elliot.
Elliot. And we will be talking a little bit about what, like a summary or synopsis of the experiment, the purpose, and outcome, and how we can use that experiment or the outcome of that experiment, if it's applicable into our lives or not, and then we can see where the discussion is going to take us. We really haven't discussed this thoroughly. So let's go. Who wants to give us a quick synopsis of the experiment? Who watched it? Who read it, or who did the homework here?
I read it first.
All right,
Read
good
it a
job.
bit, watched it a bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you want to go first?
you could go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So what I got from the story is that Jane Elliot had an experiment on a group of children. So they were separated into the brown-eyed children and the blue-eyed children. And what she did was she gave the blue-eyed children blue collars so that she could easily distinguish the brown from the blue. And then she told the brown-eyed children that they were superior to the blue-eyed children. And what else she did was that she gave these brown-eyed children privileges. So among them was that she gave them second servings during lunchtime at school, and the brown-eyed children were also allowed to use the newly built jungle gym at school, and they were also allowed 5 more minutes longer during their lunch, during their recess break. As compared to the blue-eyed children, Jane Elliot constantly brought up their flaws. So say the blue-eyed children had any individual differences where, I wouldn't say flaws, but maybe they were not performing quite as well in certain aspects. Then she would bring it up and generalize it towards the entire blue-eyed children population. And she would use it against them, saying that this is why the blue-eyed children are inferior. So at the end of the experiment, what happened was that these brown-eyed children, because they believed that they were superior to these blue-eyed children, eventually their academic achievement was at a higher level compared to the blue-eyed children. And these blue-eyed children, they also transformed. So later on, at the end of the experiment, they became more timid. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add?
So, Miss Elliot wanted to do this experiment because she thinks that prejudice is something that learned maybe through the history or their experience. So she feels like prejudice is something can be unlearned. So she wanted to do this experiment to test whether it can be unlearned.
So that's like the purpose of the experiment. From you, Adam, any
I
thoughts?
think you learn a lot, not just about the effects of prejudice on the people that are being discriminated against, but also how being in that position of privilege changes you. Because she did bring up that students that were already a little slower or like not as bright or who were more timid before, once they got to that point of privilege, they became more assertive. They were more dominant with how they were handling themselves. They were volunteering to take leadership positions, and I think it's more towards all of this came from just being told that you are this and this and this, and they are this and this and this. So it's more about, it shows more that if you're just teaching them that they are a certain way and this another group is a certain way and you shouldn't talk to them because of this, growing up, kids learn those things and they internalize that. So
Good. Yeah. I totally agree with all that you guys said, and it's a really interesting experiment. There are a few different experiments from different people, and it's quite a famous study in terms of defining two groups and see how they interact. And you, like you mentioned, all of you mentioned, is that in this experiment you see the impact of the behavior on the psychology of the person. When the blue-eyed were labeled as blue-eyed and inferior, they were not as confident. They forgotten the sign that they just read, and they read the wrong sign. And once they were giving that, they were told to be, they are the superior. Their attitude totally changed. Their psychology totally changed. So what is the purpose then? What do you guys think the purpose of, from what you read or from what you collect, listening to or watching it or reading it? So I heard from Liang that one thing is that she wanted to unlearn discrimination that we learned from.
My takeaway was that prejudice and discrimination is learned, and sometimes it's not even as direct as telling someone, don't talk to them because they're bad people, but it's more towards just picking, like kids can pick up on these things from their parents, from their teachers, and once it becomes internalized, they just start to believe that they are in the right, and it becomes their new belief that they are better than certain people, and they don't see anything wrong with it. So I think it's more towards it. It also shows that this can be changed because all we have to do is just.
What if it's a law? How can you change that?
It's still, if it's a law, it's
In
like
the
a
US
long
is a law.
process.
Is a law to discriminate against people from
Laws.
certain countries. They are judged as terrorists
But laws can be
and
changed.
specific religion.
Laws can be changed. That's the thing. So
Well, it's not changing for the last
It-
4 years.
well, here's
Biden's
the
not
thing.
planning to change
The
it, is
people,
he?
if you educate a younger generation of people and they grow up, this is not gonna happen in like a few years. But if they grow up to an age where they're the people that are in charge of the country, and if they already have these new set of values that says these things must be changed, then they would be more willing to change those things compared to.
Okay, so let's take it a notch deeper. What if it's not a law, but it's an actual belief? It's a system that you are grown up, the culture. How can we take this experiment and learn from it? And how would that? Is the experiment applicable in our lives? Can we apply that? How can we do that?
Yes, I think yes, because Elliot let the children to experience what is the feeling being discriminated, being prejudiced. So they will put themselves into the other's shoes, so they know what is the feeling, so they won't repeat to hurt them with the same feeling.
Yeah, if you talk to the Myanmar and the Rohingyas don't have that right. If we talk about the Palestinians and the Palestinians don't have that right. If we talk about the blacks, the African Americans in the US and the white and the Hispanics, they don't have the same rights. And the Native Americans. My question is, how applicable is her experiment? How can we bring it into a reality? I find that also challenging for myself as well. It's really an interesting experiment. It's just that it's difficult. It's maybe almost impossible to bring it to our lives because it is so embedded in our lives to discriminate.
That's true.
Right. If we do bring her experiment into our daily lives, you say, we also have to question the ethicalities of that. The ethicalities.
Yeah, true.
The ethics of that.
The ethics.
This experiment per se, and
So the ethics of that experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. You want to tell us more? You want to elaborate more? If there's anything else?
Like you said, because it's so embedded in them, and these are children that we are experimenting on.
Yeah.
And this could end up, later down their journey in their life, it could reflect on them later on.
Yeah,
They
and that's
can
why they
adopt
signed
it.
that waiver. They waived their rights on any impact of distress or ulcer or anything like that. They already covered themselves on that. But in that sense, yeah, I mean, is it ethical? Is it an ethical experiment? I really don't know. I think it's an interesting experiment. I mean, I'm not doubting. I'm not saying that. Yeah, it's good to discriminate. I'm not saying that. So it's difficult to implement. You see the elephant? So it's difficult to implement, and at the same time, we're not happy with discrimination. So how do we go about doing that?
I think it could provide information towards, at the very least, as like a public service announcement to like inform people,
Awareness.
raise awareness.
Raising awareness. Yeah, we've been doing all that. Everybody's been doing that. Like the French president recently spoke against the Muslims, and he basically categorized them and judged them to be terrorists.
I think that's also one of the things that should be considered is change is only going to happen from a point of leadership. I think for social psychology, there's the whole the idea behind mob mentality and why people are okay with doing bad things because they shift the blame from themselves to the person in charge. So let's say if I did something in this office and it was something that you told me to do, and it's not something that makes people happy, I could just be like, oh, it's not my fault. Mar told me to do it, so that shifts my blame. I don't feel bad about it. So when people are discriminating against a group of people, if the person in charge of those people are having the same bad beliefs that they have, then they could say, look, the person in charge is like this.
So if I tell you Walter is a boy, Liang is a girl, let's take him out to lunch, he's one of us.
Yeah.
Then you would blame it on me.
Then for me, it would.
So he's not at fault
like
if he did that.
Because the key word here would be you told me.
Yeah.
So I
So
didn't.
is it okay to? Now that's a very good question. Now, is it okay to do what we're told if it comes to discrimination? Can I, as a manager, a person at work, can I discriminate against my employees based on their performance? Can a father or a mother or any parent discriminate against their children because which one is obeying and which one is not? Can we do that? Can I have one of my eldest children to be discriminated against the other child because the other child is not listening to me?
Because I suppose there's also the dynamic of the leadership where if I don't do what you say, are you going to put me in the group of
That's the power of
discrimination?
authority, right?
Yeah.
And there's an experiment on that as well, by the way. It's a powerful experiment. They did it in, I think, Harvard or Stanford.
The
Thank
Stanford
you. Yes,
business
Stanford.
experiment.
The Stanford experiment. Maybe we should talk about that as well.
Pretty
And there's also the zapping. Whatchamacallit? I forgot the
Prisoners.
name.
You zap the prisoners?
No.
Yeah, well, you zap the
Was that Maslow?
Conformity, right?
conformity. Yes. So they listen to the authority, the person in authority, and they just zapped him until quote unquote died, but they didn't know that he died.
Yeah.
But they believed it. So that's another experiment that we would like to also touch base on. So what I'm hearing from you, Adam, is that if I were told and if there was any negative consequences, it's just better for me just to comply.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? How would you feel if I took him out for lunch and you were left alone because you're a girl?
So, definitely I would feel.
You would hate the boss, right? You wouldn't hate.
Yeah, I would hate you.
I think it would depend on the severity of the consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
True, and that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
That can be very subjective.
This is when it turns into a case by case basis.
True.
Kind of.
Is it justified? Is it okay to do that? How does Jane's experiment can fix that kind of problem? Yeah. You guys can join. Yeah.
So I think because at the end of the day, we always have to discriminate, right? So it happens in every aspect of your life. You discriminate priorities of tasks. You discriminate between your job and family. You always have to discriminate. So because you have to set. That's how we work. We put things in hierarchy, right? So like say for even an organization, there's discrimination can happen because. For instance, like since Amma is the boss and he has the money investing in this company, and then since we are underneath, we are we are with relationally.
Attached.
Attached with relationally. There are things that we have to follow and might not be, might not be something that we like. But because of the quote-unquote discrimination, it still happens. But there's in my opinion, there's a justified discrimination. There's a hierarchy. There's discrimination of priorities. So with Jane Elliot, I think what she's saying is that there are things in our lives, like eye color, that we can't control. So which family you're born into, you can control. I don't think her aim is to eliminate discrimination necessarily. Is to make people empathize, because I think that's what's missing.
Yeah, I think she mentioned something like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So because a person maybe born in a better family would think like all you have to do to be successful is hard work and determination, right? And that's true, but there's like a survival bias there, because all the things that he sees or the person sees is people who do hard work and determination are successful. What about those who also like did hard work and determination but did not become successful? So there's a survival bias, right?
Does that mean they're failures?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
So I think that's the main point that she's trying to
That's a very good point. And if I would like to invite us all to think about, or maybe consider, the fact that her experiment is discriminating against the blue. I mean, her decision to take the blue, as if the blue-eyed, not the blue, but the blue-eyed people, as if they didn't experience discrimination, that by itself is discrimination.
It's true.
It's a judging, because I've met blue-eyed blondes who changed their hair color, who changed their eye color because they were discriminated against. So in the US, the blondes are stupid. There are a lot of blonde jokes, and she was telling me, she was a classmate, and she was telling me that I saw her once. She come in with red hair, and I was like, "What's going on?" She's like, "You have no idea." Now people are talking to me respectfully. It's like between semesters, after the semester breaks, and she was saying people now are talking to me much differently, and before they were talking to her like she's an idiot. That they had to repeat everything. I mean, she was telling me all about it. So discrimination has no color. Discrimination has no race or
discrimination doesn't discriminate.
Discrimination does not discriminate. Yeah, discrimination doesn't discriminate. Yeah, that's a good point. So what is discrimination then? How can we say this is discrimination, but this is not? What makes an act to be categorized as discrimination?
When a minority group is facing negative consequences.
Okay. What else? Anything you want to add on to that?
I think power has to do with it as well. When a group is more powerful or a group is weaker than the other, it's more likely to be considered discrimination.
So if there is a powerful person, then there is discrimination. Is that what I'm hearing? Because what I heard from Walter, if there is a negative consequence, that's discrimination. And you're saying if there is power with certain people, there is discrimination.
Yes.
All right.
What about privileges?
I'm sorry?
What about privileges? Like some
Pre-religious?
Yeah. Someone received privilege.
Oh,
then-
privileges.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Someone received privilege, but the other group doesn't have privilege. It's
Okay.
like,
Selective privileges. Is that what I'm
Yeah.
hearing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting some people some privileges that others cannot have. Okay.
I think
Any
there's
thoughts?
also like the lack of opportunities you get. I think from Elliot's experiment, there was because she has blue eyes and she was a teacher, and I think one of the brown-eyed students asked why they're a teacher, and another brown-eyed student said, don't worry about that. If she had brown eyes, she would be like the principal or something. So there's also the limitation of
So they're more likely to be appointed. There's a study in the U.S. that taller men get promoted faster than shorter men.
interesting.
That's a wonderful one.
I know, right? It's like that. I missed
They
it.
go up higher because there's less distance to cover.
I don't know. Maybe they get intimidated. The HR people get
Yeah,
intimidated. Like, okay,
probably.
fine, we'll just promote you. No, I'm just joking. But in addition to male and female, more male CEOs than female CEOs.
So that's patriarchy then.
How does
So that's another way to define discrimination.
Yeah.
how does
Patriarchy.
like the different types of culture come into play then? Because for the US it's more individualistic, but for like countries like Malaysia we're more collectivistic. So I think when Lutfi explained how like when there's a person that's in charge of a company, everyone there's discrimination, but it's justified that because they're in this hierarchy because they've invested in this much, and as like collectivistically we are more focused on maintaining like the image of the company rather than our individual selves. So how does that affect discrimination?
How?
Maybe that's not discrimination, and maybe that's
Meritocracy.
meritocracy, because you have to, in order. I mean,
Can we discriminate against meritocracy?
no, you can't, right? Because like, if you work harder, you put more work, you're gonna get more in return.
That's so capitalist. In Russia, that wouldn't fly. Well, the old Russia I knew.
Yeah, so in a sense, like, it's about, because I think it's not. This is my my what do you call it? Like a very coarse opinion about this subject. It's not about leveling down everything so that everything is equal. It's about pulling people out so that it's equal here. And you cannot be, when I say equal here, in the sense of you cannot always be, it's never going to be like, everybody in the company is a CEO, right? That's just impossible. So that's I think that works also with life. You have to always have a prime minister, you have to always have someone that's in charge. So, but then how do you get that? I think it's about leveling the opportunity. So if you're a Muslim or a black guy or a white guy, that shouldn't be taken into account for you to gain the position of that requires meritocracy, right? So it should be on facts. It should be, okay, are you good at this? Are you good at this? Okay, this guy's better at this.
So qualification is what I'm hearing from you.
Qualification, yes. Hence, like, if that's like a natural, how to say, maybe, as human beings, we know this, like, that might be a natural inclination to certain things, right? Like Asians, they may be, because of upbringing and stuff like that, they are more inclined to do well in mathematics and stuff like that, and mathematics and sciences. Now, not to say that, and then because this happens in Harvard, I think, they actually did, like, what did they do? They require a higher qualification for Asian Americans to enter Harvard compared to other races, because they don't want it to be homogeneous, right?
All the Asians will be in Harvard. But that's their assumption, right? That's why they put that, because they thought all Asians are good in math.
Yeah, exactly. How about all the Asians that?
But actually, a lot of other races that are much better in math than Asians.
That's discrimination.
It is, and that's
That's a good-
exactly what he's trying to say. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. And because there's a lot of things that come into play. So Asian countries are overall are developing countries. So they need this manpower. They need this STEM fields people. They need engineers, doctors. Like science-based stuff. Compared to the US, where if you notice, like, liberal arts is much more advanced, literature is much more advanced because they are developed. They have this. They are, like, if you look at Maslow's theory of of motivation, like the lower one, I think first, second, and third, they are already secured. They have money. They have a place to stay. Now they are working towards self-actualization, which is more abstract thinking and stuff like that. And to be fair, we can see that happening in Malaysia. Like, we have overabundance of engineers, we have overabundance of doctors. And now, like, we can see, like, young entrepreneurs coming up. We can see, like, startups. The startup culture in Malaysia is blooming. which shows a change of direction from industrialization to a more, I guess, what do you call it, like abstract figuring out like who they are. Yeah.
This happened during the Roman Empire as well, didn't it? Or during the Greeks, when they were more artistic.
Oh, you mean the
Yeah.
trend?
Yeah.
The same trend. Yeah, I see
The
what you mean.
change
Similar.
from
Yeah.
scientific
Yeah,
advancement
they
to-
shifted from scientific to artistic, or rather, there were two fields. There was a scientific and an artistic field at the same time. Yeah.
So in a sense, sometimes it's not racism. It's not necessarily discrimination, but there's multiple factors. My point is there's multiple factors that come in. You know, there's inclination, there's natural inclination in terms of genders.
But anybody can say,
culture.
yeah, she's qualified, or I can say Walter is more qualified than her, and I don't hire her. But in my mind, I'm discriminating against her because she's a girl.
Yeah, that's the thing that we have to address.
I mean, I can play this game. Anybody can play this game. My question is, how applicable is it? What's the point? What do we learn from all of this? How can we make a change? Like somebody said, change. Who said it from this side?
Oh, was it for
No,
like
I mean,
changing laws?
no. There was some change that we need to. Where does the change about towards against or towards discrimination should come from? How do we change the current status?
Probably education.
Yeah, I think I heard that
Education,
awareness,
yeah.
and yeah, let's can we spend a little time and brainstorm on that? Share some thoughts. How can we change the status quo? Because across the board, and you mentioned it, and pretty much everybody mentioned it, that it's happening on a daily basis. Authorities, cultures, parents, you name it, religion. Yeah.